In the spring of 1517, London was a city of shadows and whispers. The narrow, cobbled streets of Cheapside buzzed with the clamour of merchants hawking wares, apprentices toiling in workshops, and the ever-present hum of discontent. Beneath the surface of daily life, a storm was brewing, a tempest fueled by fear, envy, and the sharp sting of scarcity. The city's native-born apprentices, young men with calloused hands and restless hearts, muttered darkly about the foreigners in their midst: French weavers, Flemish cobblers, Italian goldsmiths. These outsiders, they claimed, were stealing their livelihoods, driving up the cost of bread and ale, and crowding the city with their strange tongues and stranger customs. It was April 30th, a night heavy with the promise of May Day's revels, when the whispers turned to shouts. In the dim glow of torchlight, a young apprentice named Will Tanner stood among a growing crowd in Cheapside. Will was no stranger to hardship. At 19, he'd spent years under the thumb of a demanding master, scraping by on meager wages while the price of everything seemed to climb. But tonight, his blood ran hot with something more than hunger. A fiery preacher named John Bell had been stoking the flames of resentment for weeks, his voice ringing out in taverns and churchyards. The foreigners take your bread, your work, your future. Will you stand idle while they choke our city? Will's friend, Tom Brewer, a lanky lad with a quick temper, clapped him on the shoulder. They say the foreigners live like lords in St. Martin's, while we starve, Tom spat. Tonight, we take back what's ours. The crowd swelled, 1,000 strong, apprentices, labourers, and rogues, their faces lit with a dangerous fervour. Clubs, knives, and makeshift torches gleamed in their hands as they surged through the streets, a tide of rage crashing toward the immigrant enclaves. The first sparks of violence flared in St. Martin-le-Grand, a sanctuary where foreign artisans had long sought refuge. Will hesitated at the edge of the mob, his heart pounding as he watched Tom hurl a stone through a weaver's window. The crash of glass was answered by screams from within, a French family, their faces pale with terror, cowering as the crowd tore into their home. Furniture splintered, cloth was ripped to shreds, and the air grew thick with the acrid smell of burning thatch. Will's stomach churned, but the mob's frenzy was a current too strong to resist. He found himself shouting, swinging a stick at a shutter, caught in the wild, terrible rhythm of destruction. Across the city, the chaos spread like wildfire. Italian merchants in Lombard Street barricaded their doors as rioters battered them with iron bars. Flemish bakers fled into the night, their shops looted and left in ruins. In the midst of the mayhem, a figure emerged from the shadows: Thomas More, the Under-Sheriff of London, his face stern but calm. Clad in a dark cloak, he stood before the mob in Cheapside, his voice rising above the din. "Good men, cease this madness," he called. "You tear at the heart of our city, not its foes. Go home, I beg you, before blood stains us all." For a moment, Will thought the crowd might listen. Moore's words carried weight, his reputation as a scholar and man of justice known even to the lowliest apprentice. But Tom, his eyes wild, shouted back, "No more talk. They've taken enough." A chorus of jeers drowned out Moore's pleas, and a flung cobblestone forced him to retreat, his men pulling him to safety as the mob roared its defiance. The night grew darker, the violence more desperate. In St. Martin's, a young Italian girl named Lucia hid beneath a table, clutching her infant brother as rioters ransacked her father's goldsmith shop. Her father, Matteo, stood at the door with a poker, his face a mask of defiance, but the mob was too many. Lucia's heart raced as she whispered prayers, the sounds of shattering glass and her father's cries piercing the night. She thought of the stories her father told, of leaving Verona for a better life, of building a home in this strange, cold city. Now, that dream was crumbling under the weight of hate. By midnight, the city was a battlefield. The lieutenant of the tower, Sir Richard Chumley, watched from his post, his jaw tight as reports of the riots flooded in. He had warned the King's Council of rising tensions, but none had foreseen this eruption. With the mob showing no signs of stopping, he made a fateful choice. "Load the cannon," he ordered, his voice steady but grim. From the tower's battlements, artillery roared, the thunder of gunfire shaking the city. Bolts of iron tore through the night, splintering rooftops and scattering the rioters in panic. Will froze, the sound deafening, his courage crumbling as he saw men fall, blood pooling on the cobbles. The mob broke, fleeing into alleys and shadows, their fury doused by fear. By dawn, the city was silent, save for the groans of the wounded and the crackle of dying fires. The King's men swept through London, rounding up the rioters with ruthless efficiency. Will, his face smeared with soot, was among the 300 dragged to the tower. Tom was not so lucky. A cannon shot had caught him in the chest, leaving him lifeless in Cheapside. In the cold, damp cells, Will sat shivering, the weight of his actions crashing over him. He thought of the French family, the Italian girl, the lives he'd helped shatter. "What have I done?" he whispered, his voice breaking. The trials were swift and merciless. King Henry VIII, eager to restore order, declared the riots treason against the crown. 17 men, some barely older than Will, were sentenced to death. On a grey morning, their bodies swung from gibbets in Cheapside, Bishopsgate, and London Bridge, a grim warning to the city. Will, spared by a twist of fate, watched from the crowd, his heart heavy with guilt. The executions were a spectacle, but they could not erase the scars of that night. In St. Martin's, Lucia and her brother survived, though their father did not. She vowed to rebuild, to honor his dream with every piece of gold she shaped. Across the city, Thomas More walked the ruined streets, his mind wrestling with the fragility of peace. He penned letters to the king, urging mercy for the remaining prisoners. And though many were freed, the city would not soon forget. The evil May Day riots, as they came to be called, left a haunting mark on London's soul. For Will, it was a reckoning, a journey from rage to remorse, a lesson carved in the ashes of a city torn apart. For Lucia, it was a spark of resilience, a resolve to rise above hatred. And for London, it was a mirror held up to its darkest impulses, a reminder that fear could ignite in an instant, but healing would take years. In the quiet of May's End, as the city began to mend, a single flower bloomed in the rubble of St. Martin's, a fragile bud, defiant in the dawn's light. It was a small thing, but it spoke of hope, of a city that might yet learn to embrace all its children. Many thanks for treading this tale's dark path. If its chill gripped you, like, follow, subscribe, and comment below.